Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's webinar. Happy to be here. I'm not Joe Gardner. He's on a beach in Guatemala right now, so he's got me coming in to take his place this evening and to chat with these panelists about diversifying revenue streams. So I'm Connor English. For any of you that don't know me, I'm a Manitoba Territory Manager with Covers & Co. And I also farm with my family at Bradwardine, Manitoba. That's just west of the rivers. We've got a cow-calf and yearling operation there, and predominantly perennials. So super excited to bring these three panelists to you today. We've got Duane Thompson, Jerry Doan, and Kim Maloney, and we've got panelists from all across Canada and into the US tonight. So looking forward to it, and good list of questions and whatnot, and some really, really great stories about these operations that these folks run. So like I said before, we've got Jerry Doan from North Dakota, Duane Thompson from Saskatchewan, and Kim Maloney from Quebec joining us tonight to talk about diversifying revenue streams, something that I have a real high interest for myself. Diversity, just the word, what it is and how we can implement it on our farms, whether it be in our fields or on a farm scale for that matter. And I think these three panelists do a really good job on their farms. On diversification and really finding different ways to increase their profitability and their resiliency on their farms. So a little bit of background about my farm. We're just west of rivers at Bradwardine, Manitoba. You can see a shot of our farmyard here. Diversity has been something I've really been putting a lot of thought into the last few years. How can we put ourselves in a position to succeed more times than not? And really just put ourselves in a good spot, knowing that we're going to have, whether it be a feed source or a good income source, just to increase our profitability as much as we can and build a really resilient farming system moving forward into the future for the next generation after us and moving forward. So a little bit on our feed sources that we utilize on our farm. Like I said before, we're a mixed cow-calf operation. We calve a group of cows in the springtime, and we've done a little bit of fall calving and summer calving as well. We usually background our yearlings from the years prior's calf crop, with predominantly majority of our acres are into grass production, with the other of our annual acres are into annual crops for feed sources for our livestock. So a shot of one of our pastures here this summer and some fields. We've got a couple different feed sources that we utilize through the winter months that I'll chat about here right now. And just finding ways that we can diversify as much as possible, set ourselves up for success, regardless of what class of animal we need to feed, what type of weather scenarios we run into throughout the winter months here in Canada, and how we can make sure we're putting ourselves in a good position as many times as not. So a couple of pictures here of our silage pile wire feeding. We got bale grazing. We do utilize stockpiled grass. We also utilize some corn grazing and swath grazing, as well as some crop residue. So a multitude of different feed sources that we utilize on our farm. Here's a picture here of a perennial pastures. Like I said, we're about 85% of our land base has been put down to perennial forages. The bulk of those over the last 3 years, we've seeded down a lot of perennial forages, very diverse mixes. Utilizing diversity for that matter, just to ensure ourselves with a good crop every year and a really good plane of nutrition. Here's a shot of our corn grazing at home. We've been utilizing corn grazing the past few years. Great way to integrate the livestock onto the cropland. Corn for us has been a really good winter feed source. Serves as some wind protection for the cows out onto some fields if we are lacking some trees. As well as just a really high energy feed source that we can graze either dry cows or pairs on, and have had good success with that, even into some snow amounts like we've received this past year and in years past. Another type of feeding systems that we've utilized on our farm the past 2 years, I guess now, is the silage pile wire feeding. So once again, just trying to put ourselves in a good position to always have a high quality feed source in place regardless of the weather. This worked really phenomenal for us last winter. Sets us up in a good spot when we do have high snow amounts like this. We're not trudging through snow as much to set up wire fences and whatnot, and we can deliver a really high quality feed source to the cows at a low cost by taking out the feeding cost with machinery. Another thing on our farm this past year that we really dove into is diversifying a little bit more on the livestock that we run. So not only on the feed sources side of things, but also on the livestock side of things. So predominantly our cow herd calves in the spring months of May and June on a 30-day calving window. And this year we had an opportunity. We turned bulls out to clean up some cows last fall and bred them for end of August and start of September. We were also able to purchase in some undervalued cows at that time that were calving in that same window and put together a fall calving group that we calved out and were able to sell as pairs this fall. So just trying to diversify a little bit more on the classes of livestock that we're running, just to ensure that we can take advantage of some of the high markets that we're in right now, but also staying true with some of our cows that we utilize in the springtime, as it really matches up well with our grazing systems and our environments. So that's definitely been a little bit of a change this year and seen some success with it there. So I guess with that, we'll move into our panelists. We're going to start with Jerry Doan. Him and his family operate the Blackleg Ranch in North Dakota. And yeah, we'll let Jerry take it away here. Thanks for coming on today, Jerry.
Hey, thanks, Connor, and welcome everyone that's on here. I'm the crazy one on the south side of the border, I guess. So I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you folks a little bit about our place here. We're just 25 miles southeast of Bismarck. We're just on the east side of the Missouri River, just to give you a little bit of a sense. Our place was started. My great grandfather actually was a Canadian citizen and actually have his Canadian or his paperwork when he elected to become an American citizen. So he came out of Canada in somewhere around 1880. And then in 1882, he homesteaded here in southern Burleigh County, North Dakota. And so we've got a long history of multi-generational, which is great and challenging at the same time, I suppose. And here, the picture that's showing up here now is actually my wife Renee and I in the center there. And then I've got 4 kids, and my daughter is not directly involved in the ranch, but her and her husband and kids, and she has the 2 older grandkids, help quite a bit. But then all 3 of the boys are directly involved in management, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we go on. But yeah, as you can see, we have 12 grandkids, and so I thought my family was relatively small, and then I married in my wife, who came from a big family, and I thought our side was going to be extinct. But as you can see, they did all right, I guess. So we're not going to be extinct the way it looks, and it's all good. So, like I said, all 3 boys are involved directly, and the slide that's up there now is, I'll jump ahead of myself a little bit as long as that slide's up there, and talk a little bit about, we're a holistically managed operation. I've got a degree in animal science from North Dakota State, but quite honestly, I went through Alan Savory's holistic management and then back through another holistic management, and it changed the way I think, the way I do things. And so that's actually cover crops, and we're planting around 25 species in these cover crop mixes now. Don't get all caught up in, is 25 the right, or is it 10, or is it 100? Just get some diversity, and in that mix we've got a lot of we'll put brassicas in there to go down and pull nitrogen up, also open up the moisture lines and that sort of thing. We've got several legumes in there because I'm trying to keep the cost down on this, and if we can get these lagoons nodulating and working well, we can get by because we've run tests side by side. We can get by without fertilizer. I'm not saying you couldn't, a little starter, you maybe would pop it up earlier, but I've never seen when I tested it that it really paid for itself. And then because we would try to winter graze these things all year long, even in snow, and we've grazed them through 200-inch snowfall years, but it didn't all come at once. Now we had a disaster 2, 3 years ago, I guess it was. We got over 100 inches and it all came in 3 weeks, and probably similar listening to the Canadian folks talk to me as we were getting ready for this. You guys have got quite a bit of snow, at least in some areas, and we had to quit grazing then. But what we do now is we never bring these cattle to a corral or to a riparian area to feed them. We feed them right out there now. And so we're constantly building soil health. We're keeping the manure, keeping the urine out there, keeping it out of the watershed. And the picture on the right is grazing what it looks like in a relatively shorter snowfall year, and when those crops are mature. Now, actually, if we get say you get a foot of snow, it's probably the best thing because we plant collards and things like that in there. If you're not familiar with collards, they're like a cabbage plant without the head on them, but they'll stay green and they'll stay even in these harsh climates like I know you folks have, and we certainly do in North Dakota. And so you're getting some pretty nutritious stuff. So a little snow is actually better. And then we plant several millets in there and things. And because we do run a hunting operation, we'll throw in some stuff that works good for the hunting and that sort of thing. So it's not so much worrying about exactly what to put in. It's put in a lot of diversity. Some years one thing won't come up. Other years it just booms. And why that is I don't know if I'll ever quite figure that out, but the picture down in the left is, I guess, what I'm really proud of because we're pretty sandy. Our soil's pretty sandy in this part of the world, and some of the soil health specialists told me that it'll be really hard. And I don't know if you can see them, but it's covered with worms in there. They said it'd be really hard to get worms back in the soil because it's too abrasive. Well, after years of cover crops, and we've been doing this a long time now, and all those livestock on that land, and our biology is going up, up, up. Now it's not a straight line up or anything, it bops around like so many things in nature. But look at that soil. I mean, that's what we want. It's granulated, it's allowing moisture to go into it. It's the biology is excellent. We've got worms going on. And one of the things that took me a long time to learn, but we evaporate. The problem in why we always end up in a drought, we're evaporating so much moisture. And so we try to keep staying with these cover crops, leave 50% on there to feed the soil and to cover the soil. And my goal is to have it 100% covered. And then we're infiltrating whatever moisture we get into the soil and we're not evaporating it. And that's one of the biggest things in this deal. Is why we had one of the worst droughts in our history a couple of years ago, and we didn't sell one head of livestock off here. You build resilience into the system. So now I'll talk just a little bit about what we do on this place. I wanted to touch on those slides while they were up there, but we're a cow-calf operation, but because of our holistic goal, and we've changed from calving and killing yourself, calving in barns and pulling calves through the slop. And one year we lost 100 calves to scours. And so we moved to May and June calving. We calve out on the hills. Gosh, it's so darn much more fun. I would never go back to that ever, ever, ever. It was the number one best economic decision I ever made on this place. And then, we did try some sheep for a while. I truly believe, and I know some of the others will talk about that, I'm sure, but I truly believe multi-species is a great idea. We just weren't ready for it. We tried to just take a small flock of sheep, bind them up to a bunch of heifers, and we kind of did it, but we were spending all our time um, trying to find these sheep. And I said, we're not ready for this yet. So we kind of got out of it. But we ended up getting into the buffalo business or bison, pick your name. In this part of the country, there's a lot of Indian history and they were all buffalo, even though everybody tells me there isn't a buffalo on the North American continent. They're bison. And so I fixed all that. They're buffalo when they're alive and they're bison when they're dead. So I picked both sides here. So have a little fun with it. But anyway, we're on quite a few buffalo, and then we do have our own meat label, and we're Audubon certified, and it's all grass finished beef and bison, and we can talk about that. That's challenging because we don't have much slaughter capacity left in these small plants, but we're trying to grow it. But that's a real challenge. But I think it's an exciting part, and we can talk about that as we move along or with questions. We also custom graze some cattle, and that again with my holistic management style. I would have never done that 30 years ago because I had to own everything. It's kind of the way we're brought up in agriculture, and especially if you go to a university, they'll beat that into you almost. And some of that isn't good, but uh, so I've kind of went down the middle, and we'll own part of them and we'll custom graze part. And as long as that check's good and they're gone, you've got that income. It actually has helped our bottom line, and we run them through our grazing system. We have over 100 pastures, and we're moving cattle, every day. Not Some of them might be in a paddock for 7 days, or some might just be moving in a couple days, and it depends on where they are, what the goals are, and how things are moving. We also run quite a few yearlings here. That's been really good. This past year was a bit of a struggle. Some guys lost their hind end in this yearling market because the cattle were really high last spring, and they weren't. I mean, they're still high, but they didn't come on like everybody thought they would. And if they didn't have LRP contracts on them, in most cases, they lost money on them. Uh, we also run a hunting operation here, Rolling Plains Adventures. Here you can see a bit of it. Ducks and I guess just ducks, but we hunt ducks and geese. Pheasant hunting is a big deal. And then we hunt both mule deer and white-tailed deer, although the white-tailed deer have been pretty well wiped out on 30 miles on either side of the Missouri River with blue tongue. And we closed our season 4 years ago, and it's still closed on whitetail. They're coming back, but it's going to take a while. Now, it didn't affect mule deer as much, so there are those around. But we also do these buffalo hunts, and it's been a side thing that has really grown. We get a lot of people. The biggest challenge is having enough big bulls, because people that come to shoot them want to hang one on their wall, and they want the nice ones. And not all of them, but a lot of them do. It's a lot of fun. It's a true hunt here. You get out in the rougher country, and you have to stalk them and walk. It's not open the barn. I've been on places, open the door and shoot one out and shoot it and say that's a buffalo hunt. That's not the way we do it here. And so a lot of fun, and adds a stream of income. Rolling Plains Adventures, if you've been around to any of the hunting shows, it's been on a lot of them. You meet a lot of great people, and a lot of folks come here for, if they're old school buddies or they're old army buddies or whatever it is. When my middle son came back, we got into agritourism, and we already had the lodges, and we converted a barn to an event center. And okay, there it is. That's a wedding going on with dueling pianos there, and my boys did all the work. And they tried to use things off the ranch. We had a couple of big old railroad trestles, so can't really see them there, but there's some beams in there from the trestles. Tore down a couple of buildings. A lot of that wood is from those as well. And so we do weddings kind of happened by mistake in that my son got married and then people asked for it. That was before we had the barn, and then we added the barn. And so we do all kinds of different events, from corporate events to soil health tours to pasture management things. We had Savory here for a big school, and it allowed us to be out in the pasture, but also to come in for a meal, let him speak. And then my youngest, or my middle son, had worked for Anheuser-Busch. He's the one I never dreamed would come back to the ranch. He went to Arizona State and was in the corporate world, had it made, and got tired of all that and came back. And then he had the dream to add the microbrewery, and so that's in the barn. If any of you happen to catch the Bison, NDSU Bison and Montana State Bobcat national championship game yesterday, and the Bison won it, so they're 10-time champions, and our beer is the beer of it's the craft beer of the NDSU Bison, and those are the tap handles that we have, and they're really cool, and people love to steal those and hang them in their bar or wherever. So those are the things that I don't want to talk too long because I want to get the rest of you on here. The one thing I would say to you folks out there, if you're going to, when my boys wanted to come back, I said to them, what are you going to bring to the table? We can't do all this the way we've been doing it with a cow-calf operation. We can't add families to make this all work. And they came up with these ideas, and not every idea works. Not everything's great. It's not all perfect. Family is challenging. We're working through a huge succession plan. That's a whole nother webinar. I could spend an hour telling you what to do, what not to do, and then try to listen to myself so I do it right myself. But because it's not simple, families are a challenge, and yet very exciting. If they wouldn't have come back, I'd probably be laying on the beach somewhere. Maybe not a bad idea, but I'm really excited they're here and we add these things. It creates excitement. People ask me all the time, how do you get the next generation to come back? I say, create some excitement and get the hell out of the way. And it's very true. Most of us, including myself, it's hard to give it up. It's hard to move over. It's hard for new ideas. And I had to slap myself a few times and beat my head against the wall a couple times to say, you're part of the problem. Move over a little. You can still be involved and you can still have fun with this excitement, but let the kids spread their wings. They won't come back if you don't allow them to do some things different. I think stacking enterprises, we've never allowed that very much in agriculture, and we're not even very supportive of it, quite honestly. People will look at you funny, or in our state, our government sometimes isn't even supportive. It's how many bushels of wheat do you grow, how many cows do you have? That's the important things, not, oh, are you profitable because you added a venture or two? We got to change that mentality. And we've had people on this ranch now from all 50 states and 50 foreign countries. It opens your eyes. You hear a lot of things, and they truly believe, some of them, not all of them, that agriculture is part of the problem for the climate, for our water being bad. Their perception is we beat our animals. We don't even grow good food products. And so our goal in part of this, and one of the reasons we got into it, was to tell a positive story about agriculture and show that we can do something better. In America, and I don't know if it's like this in Canada, we went from 5% chronic illness in kids to 60% now. That tells us something's not working quite right. And I think regenerative ag, I guess I didn't mention that, we're gung-ho, excited, and in the middle of regenerative ag. I mean, I don't really care for terms because then I think we start to define them, and there's not a real definition for regenerative. It's what do you want it to be? In our case, it's trying to put a healthy product on the table, make sure we're profitable again, and then have fun doing it. Because I think in agriculture, so many times we don't have fun anymore. We're so busy beating ourselves to death and trying to pay the bills and getting the next quarter if it comes up, and then wonder why, because we don't really like what we do. You got to have fun again, and 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 make sure we're profitable again, because I think we can be. So with that, I'll kind of hopefully that gives you a little synopsis of what we're about here in North Dakota. We're just trying to make a difference, I guess, and trying to get out there and tell a story about agriculture can be the solution to most of these problems of climate, and the grasslands are a vast resource. And unfortunately, we're not telling that message very good. And so we're losing them on our side of the border for sure in vast numbers. In North Dakota, there's only 25% of the native rangeland left. And I'm okay with diversity in agriculture, but maybe we ought to pay attention and save the grasslands if we really care about the carbon sequestration and all the positive things that they do for us as our whole ecological system. So with that, Connor, thank you.
Oh, that's great, Jerry. Thank you very much for the great overview of your operation and some really good some knowledge and wisdom there on the next generation coming back to your operation. It's really cool to see how things have diversified on your farm and yeah, can't wait to get into some more questions here. But I guess with that, we'll turn things over to Duane Thompson from Kelliher, Saskatchewan, and Duane, if you want to hop on here with your camera and take it away.
Well, thank you, Connor. It's a privilege to be on the webinar tonight, and it's I always have mixed feelings about webinars because it's always I always feel that when I'm face to face with people, I take home more than I leave behind, and the people that I meet and the visits after. But at any rate, thanks for having me. And T2 Land and Cattle Company is a company that my wife and I coined that name, but I'm on a century farm that I guess it's a bit complicated. My dad bought his first quarter of land when he was 18 years old back in 1950. But a little while after I came back to mom and dad's operation, we were able to buy my grandfather's farm that my uncle had been farming, and that he started back after the First War. So that qualified for us for a century farm. So I'm pretty proud of that we've been here in this neighborhood, actually on my mom's side, for about 126 years. And it's a great area of the province. It's the parkland, and it's not your typical stereotypical area that a lot of people think of Saskatchewan. It's rolling hills, and it's puddle country. We're the second highest point in Saskatchewan at about 2,300 feet, and the highest point that was covered by the last glacier. So it's just a little bit different than a lot of places, and it's not the greatest farming country. It's pretty good farming country, but we sure can grow forage. And so you could just go to the next slide, please. So we're, as I said, we're a family operation. My wife Paula and I are just kind of off to your right there. We had 4 kids in the 90s, and in the last 3.5 years, we've had 8 grandchildren. So our family has expanded very quickly, and it's just the light of our life. Our 2 sons, Adam and Cole, are on the operation with us. Our one daughter was on the operation with us until that tall guy in the middle came to my office one day and asked if he could go to their operation. So I had to grudgingly say okay. But they have a great operation there too, and they're doing a lot of similar things with a diversified operation as well. And then my other daughter is a nurse like her mom, and they've got 3 little kids now, and she married the farm boy up the road. So I'm very proud that all of our children married or are involved in agriculture, and not a lot of people can say that. If you could go to the next slide, please. So I think, one of the things that's really near and dear to my heart, same as Jerry, is, holistic management. Back in the early 90s, Paula and I took holistic management from Don Campbell, and that was a really enlightening experience. There's been a lot of people that have had a lot of different systems, and people that have had a great effect on me personally and on our operation. But holistic management had really made a big difference. We came home, the first picture you showed of our kids and the very first one with the boots, that's our logo. And that represents intergenerational. And then when we had our kids, our goal was to build an operation that was large enough to have employees, that we could have a family life and have some holidays, and large enough and diversified enough to be able to welcome any of them that wanted to come back into it. And so holistic management, I guess I learned a lot from that. Its number one basis is to focus on the people, and then work out to your resources. I mean, people are your resources, and then your land resource, and then work out from there and make it all work from there. And so the picture with the cattle and the canola in the foreground, there's a fence obviously in front of that. And so we've taken what our family has always done on both sides, my mom and my dad, a mixed operation, and we've just made it a larger operation, and it's working quite well for us. You want to go to the next slide, please? So my favorite crop of all crops is perennial forages, and our rotation is all of our land except for 1/4, and we run just shy of 10,000 acres, and all of our land is dual purpose land except for 1/4 that I promised the old guy that I bought it from that it would always remain in bush and just for cattle grazing and for habitat, because he was a real naturalist. He loved his cows, but he loved the habitat and the naturalist and the deer, and so I promised him that, and it's our little piece of heaven that we really enjoy. So that's the only piece that doesn't get put through a 10 to 15 year rotation. And that rotation is 5 to 7 in perennial forages and 5 to 7 in annual cash crops. And so it's a pretty long rotation. It's a little bit different than the canola, snow, oats, snow, canola rotation, which isn't uncommon. And what comes with that is tremendous soil health. We haven't sprayed a fungicide or an insecticide for almost 30 years. And for the last number of years, people have been out spraying canola with for flea beetles. And we go out and we check the crop and we have no flea beetles. And we're quite convinced that our rotation has a lot to do with that, and the health of our soil. And so the other crops that we grow are canola and oats and barley, wheat, and peas. And the oats are a feed crop for backgrounding our calves. I'm going to go to the next slide, please, Connor. We have a small feedlot, capacity of a couple thousand head. It's where we bring the cattle in for weaning, and we background them and value add to them, and sell short yearlings for the most part in the spring. We kept all our heifers this year and either grassed them. Well, we did sell some replacements, and then we bred a bunch, and we've sold some bred heifers. So as I go through, I think of our profit centers and our diversified revenue system. One of the things my dad always said is that the easiest money you make is the money you don't spend. And so I think about that in our whole operation. And one of the big bills we don't have to spend because of our rotation is I like to say that 60% of our nitrogen is free, because half our land base is in forages. That's half that is a high percentage legumes, and we grow a lot of peas. And of course, you don't have to put nitrogen with that. So we only have to buy about 40% of our land base's requirements for nitrogen. And then when I say that, we fertilize at a much lower rate than a lot of the other places do, or guys around do as well, because our land just doesn't require it, and we grow very similar crops. You want to go to the next slide, please, Connor? So seeding, the month of May is a very busy time for us here. The first official day of calving is May 1st. It's not uncommon to be out seeding in May. We direct seed everything, just the one pass over the land. We even, when we're terminating a forage stand, we take it out with glyphosate in about September, and then we direct seed right into the sod in the following spring with an oat that is used for our background and our calves. And that's worked really well for us. And we don't lose a lot of the volatile nutrients that, we all love the smell of the ground after we go through it and seed it, but we shouldn't really like that smell because it's the smell of oxidizing all those good nutrients off. And so minimum disturbance is our goal. And we don't work in the fall, and we just seed straight in with all the crops. You want to go to the next one, please? And then our annual crop system provides a good portion of our base roughage for the cow herd. And we drag those little wagons around behind the combines and make those little piles. And then after weaning, the cows go out to those piles. You have to do a little electric fencing so that you don't give them a whole bunch of them at the same time. I like to give them about 4 to 6 days at a time, because if you give the cows all of them all at once, you can go to the next one, you won't get it cleaned up like that. And that was a chaff pile. We go out with that feed truck and we drop we have, of course, it's just straw and chaff, so you have to bring their nutrition level up in order to meet their needs. And our nutritionist does that for us, and we go out with the feed truck and feed on top of the piles. And but it's about half the trips out because of the straw and chaff, and we know pretty well what the nutrition of the straw and chaff is, so we just top up to what they need and to the needs of the animals. The animals at preg check-in time are split between according to their nutritional needs. The heifers are by themselves, and then we've got a herd 1 and a herd 2, and the herd 1 are really good condition cows that have only just come off of perennial forages on the 30th of December. And they grazed right up until then, and so we were real happy with that. We had lots of grass this year, and now they're on chaff piles. On the right is the fencing machine, just a very simple ratio, big pulley off an old versatile pull type swather and a Princess Auto gas engine with the smallest pulley you can possibly put on it. And we copy the spools that electric fence comes on, make steel ones, and some of that wire honestly has been out hundreds of times. It just, we put up and take down electric fence all the time. Use rebars for keeping the holding the wire up. And you can go to the next one. And of course you have to fight snow sometimes, so we got a heavy spec truck with a mixer box on it and put floater tires on it, and found an old V plow, and so we can get through a couple feet of snow pretty nicely with that and get to it. But the snowman can beat us, and we have to be prepared for that, because some years you get a lot of snow, and I was wondering if this might be one of them, where you're going to find the chaff piles in the spring because they were covered up with snow. And if that happens, we assemble bales in the field, and we put 24 bales in a group, 3 rows wide, 8 bales long, and we put a picket at each end, and we feed it with a electrified bungee cord. And once the chaff piles are done, our goal is to be done by about mid-February. And then we finish the chaff piles by then onto the bale pods, and then the fencing is done, and that doesn't usually break anybody's heart as well. And I don't think there's any more slides, are there, Connor?
Nope. Nope.
Okay. So yeah, that's kind of our system in a nutshell. You know, I both Kim and Jerry talk about their direct marketing systems, and boy, my hat goes off to the people that do that, because we did it for about 4 years. We bought a meat shop with another couple who were sheep farmers, and we direct marketed, and that's a tough gig. And unless you have a family member that's directly involved in running that show, it's tough. And so I say, hats off to those of you that are successful at it. We were not successful. We still run a burger program. We sell about 3,000 pounds of burgers from cull cows, and then some regular hamburger as well. But that's the extent of our our diversified that way. But I think our diversity in a lot of other ways in the feedlot value adding, I think we try to be as diversified as we can in our mixed farming and the feedlot and the cow herd, and it makes for a pretty good living for all of us.
Oh, thank you very much, Duane. That was a great overview of your operation. I was very lucky to come and visit your farm a few years ago back now, I guess, and listen to a few of your presentations since then, and always really intrigued by some of the things that you guys are able to do, and excuse me, and merge the mixed farm together, the grain and the livestock, and finding ways to join those together and really make the system run really well with the diversity. So really cool to look at and to see you guys are having success with that. So thanks a lot for that, and I'm sure we'll have some good questions about your operation once we get into the question period. So I guess now we'll move over to Kim Maloney from Quebec, and Kim, if you want to take it away here and talk about your family's operation in Thurso, if I say that correctly, Thurso, Quebec.
So hello, thanks for having me tonight. I'm Kim from Briley Farms. I'm the 5th generation here at the farm, and I still work every day with my parents, Brian and Lise, who are the 4th generations and are still implemented in the farm. So we're located in Thurso, Quebec, which is kind of the western part of Quebec. And our farm is located at the intersection of 2 major highways, which is why we decided to have a farm store and to sell all of our products directly here at our farm. So we're mainly grass-fed beef and grass-fed lamb producers. We have around 300 acres of permanent pastures where we graze from May to December, both our cattle and our sheep. We don't winter over any cattle ourselves, and we only have our sheep here usually in the barn during the winter time, but right now we don't have any snow, so they are still outside. So we really put a lot of work into figuring out what our strengths are, what we'd like to do, and honestly, what brings us the most money at the end of the day. And the 2 things that we really focus on here at the farm are marketing and grazing management. So we sell 90% of our meat directly here at our farm store that's open 2 days a week. We're only open on Fridays and Saturdays. And then the other 10% we sell in bulk for an online marketplace that delivers all throughout Quebec, where they come to our farm once a month. They pick up a couple pallets of meat, and then they do the distribution themselves. So we really try to get as many people to come out to our farm and buy directly from us. So we use direct marketing as our main selling point, mainly on social media using Facebook and Instagram. I post on it daily. I try to have a good mix of like funny videos, cooking videos, nice pictures of cattle grazing, kind of to keep people engaged and honestly to get them to know us, to know our family, and so they can know who's raising the meat that they're eating, which I think is a need for customers to know where their meat comes from. We also send out a monthly newsletter, which I kind of tie into the same as our social media. I try to not be super selly with our newsletters. I try to tell our story of what's been going on that month. Yeah, just to tell people what's going on and not to sell too many products, because people will automatically put it in their trash email spots. So we also have a sandwich shop that we opened a couple years ago here at our farm that's open on Saturdays, where people can come and grab lunch and have a picnic, and also stock up on their meat for the week. And also one thing that we started doing last year was we put on monthly discovery days at our farm. So once a month we host farm tours on a Saturday. So people come for a 2-hour long farm tour. It's kind of like a pasture walk, go out to see the cows. They can ask us any questions they have. And then we end it at our sandwich shop and all have lunch together. And that really brought a new crowd of people to the farm that may not have come if we didn't offer these farm tours. They would come with their families, friends, and it was a really good range of actually consumers and farmers that would attend. So it was a good mix of people. So I guess you can skip some slides, yeah, onto the beef part, yeah. So as for our beef, a little bit of context of what it's like in Quebec. The past couple of years have been quite different, the growing season especially. And especially last year, we had record amount of rain during the growing season, which definitely we had some challenges that we didn't have to deal with before. Winters have been, we've been getting a little bit of less snow and earlier springs, but we usually wait until the beginning of May to put our cattle and our sheep out on pasture. So the challenges with a lot of rain during the growing season was last year we definitely had less gains on our animals, just because the grass was just so saturated with water. It was definitely a big year of learning for us. We do have an intensive grazing system, so we do move them 4 times a day to new pasture, that specific group of finishing animals. So that definitely helps on wet years. We avoid mud, and also that they are eating the best grass that they can. So I think based on, yeah, the amount of rain, we got the gains that we could have had. So yeah, we buy all yearling steers and heifers every spring. So we don't do the cows and calves ourselves. We buy them when they're 1 year old, just because we have a limited amount of acres. We kind of want to make the most amount with the amount of land that we have. And also, I don't want to do calving and have the cows and the calves and everything. So again, focusing on what we want to do and what we brings us the most money. So yeah, we buy the yearlings every spring, and then we start harvesting them in September. So they're around 18 months. So every week from September, October, November, we harvest every week. And most of the animals sold in the fall time are sold in bulk for customers, so in quarters, halves, and full beef. And then we do keep some to keep our individual cuts stocked up at our farm store. And then as for the sheep, the breed that we have is Katahdins. They work really well for us on pasture. They're really good with lambing. They have good motherly instincts, so we aren't running after sheep trying to get them to like their lambs. And they're really low maintenance. Since we don't have a huge flock and the sheep aren't our main enterprise, we don't want to have to spend a whole lot of time running after sheep. So it works good for us. But I also did learn that not just any Katahdin sheep are good. We have to be very selective on which ones we keep. So we've been pretty strict with culling ewes that we don't want and that don't fit our environment here. So we lamb in April, and then we raise our lambs until they're 14 months old. So they are bigger carcasses. They do have a little bit more flavor, but they are all grass-fed, and they are sold all in halves and full lambs for our customers. And then this year, We've had sheep for quite a few years now, but we always had the sheep in a separate pasture than the cattle. But this past year was the first year that we actually did multi-species grazing. So we did one rotation with the sheep, followed by one rotation with the cattle, one rotation with the sheep, and then the cattle. And that worked really, really good for us. The sheep didn't have any parasite problems. And this year, the 40 acres that we did that little test with, it was the best grass that we had on our farm, both of our farms. So I definitely think having multi-species is definitely beneficial for the farm. And then as for the pork, we do around 90 pigs per year. And going back to what I said earlier about doing what we're good at and what we like to do, we used to try to raise pigs ourselves. Well, we would buy piglets in the spring and then feed them until the fall time. But we realized that nobody on the farm liked to work with pigs. No one liked to feed them. But we did have a big demand for pork, so we didn't want to like stop offering it. So we reached out to a farm just 10 minutes away from us. They raised pigs, and they did a little bit of direct marketing. I was kind of hesitant to contact them just because I didn't want to think them to think that we were trying to like steal their customers or trying to go against them, but they were super happy when I contacted them because they actually really didn't like direct marketing and they didn't like selling pork. So it was a win-win. So now we source our pork from that local farm. They raise however many that we want. They're happy, we're happy, and it turns out that it's cheaper for us. Well, we make more money with them raising them for us than we were when we were raising the pigs ourselves. So it's a win-win for everybody. So yeah, I think when you're trying to start direct marketing, it's good to have kind of a brainstorming to figure out what your marketing goals are and what your unfair advantage is. I think every farm has an unfair advantage for sure, and it's important to use it. So our unfair advantage here at the farm is definitely location. Like I said, we're located at the corner of two intersections. And we're 45 minutes away from Ottawa, which is a big city, and then an hour and a half away from Montreal, which is another big city. So we have the population really close to us. So we definitely try to maximize that. So our main goal is to try and get as much traffic to come to our farm as possible on Fridays and Saturdays when our farm store is open. Selling directly from the farm is definitely the best money you can make, because when you add delivery, when you add selling to restaurants, selling in bulk, they usually want a discount. And then delivery also, it adds another job. Which definitely has a cost as well. So yeah, our marketing goals are definitely based on getting as much traffic to our farm store and utilizing that unfair advantage, and trying to get people to stay at the farm longer, which is why we added having sandwiches available, having the farm tours. And then next year, we're planning on having farm stays. So we have a cabin that we're gonna start to rent out as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about our farm and kind of what we do for marketing.
Well, that's awesome, Kim, and really cool to see what you guys have developed on your farm, and really put an emphasis on doing what you guys have the enjoyment of doing, and you're being rewarded by that on the highest profitability enterprises that you're taking a part in. And I definitely find myself in some situations or asking myself questions. Why am I doing this job? I don't like doing it. I need to find a way to pivot and do something else, or make this job easier so that I enjoy it more. And all three of you really discussed that a lot, and the enjoyment on the farm, and do the things that you like and that are gonna bring you the most profitability and set your families up for success moving forward. And when you're happy doing something, things just seem to flow so much nicer and really cool. And yeah, wow, those are some great numbers on the direct to consumer meat sales. Really cool. I know we chatted before the webinar about the pork side of things, and I was in
Yeah.
the same boat. I had great hopes and ambitions to be in the pork business, and things went downhill, and yeah, I got out pretty quick. So that is really cool that you're able to find a partnership with another farm and make that work, and very cool. So I guess with that, I'll get we'll move into the Q&A. We had a ton of really good questions come into the chat here prior to the webinar starting, and really thankful for everyone putting your questions in tonight. And I guess that first question that we'll start with, I started asking Duane and Jerry while we were getting that technical difficulty worked out, but one of the main drivers, I guess, for diversifying your operations. I know you've all talked about the next generation coming back to the farm and finding enjoyment, and I guess for all of your operations, what was the main driver? Was there a point in your career in the ag business that you seen fit that we need to change? There needs to be some change here in order to bring either the next generation back or to increase our profitability a little bit to make this thing run a little bit better. Maybe we'll start with Duane there, and then Kim and Jerry, but and I guess one maybe driver that was your key thing that made, say, maybe on your operation, Duane, why you guys are doing the grain and cattle. What was that main driver for you guys?
Well, I can't claim to have invented anything here, Connor, because I come from a long line of mixed operators, as I mentioned, with my parents and my grandparents. But you know, I guess what I'd say is the main driver to that for those generations is to optimize our resource and optimize the land resource, because in this pothole parkland country, you know, before excavators and earth movers, it wasn't uncommon for a quarter of land to be 120 acres of farmable land. And so there was all that marginal land that the cattle were able to utilize. And so, yeah, you know, it was pure economics. I mean, mixed farming has been around forever, and trying to extract the dollars out of your land base in order to make a living and raise your family. And then I saw it as the opportunity to, if our children were interested in being part of this business, we would have enterprises that hopefully some of them would take interest in and manage different ones, and which has happened because Cole, our oldest son, he's greatest interest is the grain, and he's a mechanic, and Adam is the working his way into cow boss, and so that really helps in the succession plan as well. And I'm looking to work my way out of a job.
Oh, that's really awesome. Kim, I guess for yourself, what are some of the main drivers that you guys have found, obviously diversifying into the few different meat sectors that you offer on your farm, and I know you alluded to it a little bit for drawing traffic to your farm and offering the farm tours and having the farm open on Fridays and Saturday for traffic. But what were the main drivers, I guess, on your guys' operation for maybe offering the different meat selections that you have and having the open doors to get people there?
But yeah, for sure. Like when I was coming back to the farm, well, I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to fit in, because there was, we actually used to have a wedding venue as well. So I thought maybe I wanted to take over more of like the wedding venue part of things. We also had, yeah, cattle, sheep, wedding store. We also have a transformation kitchen that we do prepared meals and Christmas stuff. So I was like, oh, how do I like fit in personally at the farm? And I do have a background and a diploma in business marketing. So I came back to the farm actually right at COVID. So the wedding venue closed down, and then I kind of came back to the farm full time. But then the revenue at that time couldn't sustain another person coming back to the farm. So we had to double meat sales, which that year was really easy because people were going crazy because grocery stores were out of meat. So people were really supporting local. And then, yeah, just year like 2021, 2022, we've just continually added new things and really doing like during the winter time, we really do a marketing analysis on like, okay, like what do we think is going to happen this year? How can we adjust? I know this year we're like, people's budgets might be a little bit lower. So yeah, we definitely have a lot of marketing meetings during the winter time.
Really cool. And Jerry, I guess to finalize with you there on this question, you alluded to earlier on allowing your children to bring something back to the farm if they seen value on wanting to return to the family operation, being in a position to bring something with them, whether it be an enterprise or diversify within one of your enterprises that you already had. And for you, was it just more or less a way of life, and I guess a wage probably more than anything, to allow them to bring a career with them more or less than anything? Was there any main drivers for you on that?
Well, the main driver was multi-generational. It was bringing them back. But I think our two holistic goals are bringing profitability back and improving our quality of life. And so we tried to find things that complemented and kind of fit in that. And then aside of that is because the cover crops are a big part of hunting, but also a big part of winter grazing, is this whole soil health area. And we've seen tremendous improvement in soil health, which is the part that I think I'm the most proud of, because I love seeing it and I love seeing that you make a difference. And just like you said, Duane, I can't say I don't ever use a chemical on something. I wish I could. One day that would make me really happy, but we've dang sure cut back like you have. And it's fun to see. And then again, one of our main things is to be able to, just like Kim, and you're doing a lot of that, Kim, but telling the story, and spreading that word. I think we generally stuck in agriculture of telling this positive story. And so just look at the media. Why are we always beat up? We don't do a very good job of telling that story. So
No, those are some really good points, and I guess that kind of leads into the next question that I have, and it definitely is something that comes up quite often. While diversifying something like this, I know we've gone through our struggles on trying to utilize different feeds, whether it be different feed systems on our farm to put ourselves in a good position always to succeed, whether it be on a weather side of things or the class of animal that we're trying to feed, or trying to juggle the different calving seasons if we have a different group of cattle that are off from our normal time of the year. But some of the struggles and hurdles, I guess, that maybe you and your families have gone through, whether it be on a practical side of things or just even in a relationship side of things and working with one another. What are some things that you guys have gone through? Probably because of diversifying and having multitude of different revenue streams that are happening on your farms. Maybe we'll start with Jerry and we'll go back around to Kim and then Duane. So there's some struggles and hurdles that you guys have been through while diversifying your operations.
lots of them. And like I said, in my early, families aren't simple sometimes, and like, and you can probably all relate to this. It's exciting, you're proud, all those things, but families aren't always perfect. And then when you do diversify and you have these stacked enterprises, one thing I never quite expected is who's more important. One of your kids, like my oldest boy, runs the hunting operation, and he thinks that's the most important thing on this ranch. And maybe it is, but and we've gotten better at that, but early on it was like, well, you can't graze cows over there because that's where we're going to hunt. And so then we're like, well, we're kind of running out of forage. We need to go on some of these cover crops. Well, you can't do it. And my youngest boy that kind of runs the cattle and stuff. And so I was always caught in the middle of that. And, you know, as we've gotten better at that, I know this year we went through all that. And I don't know if there was one argument about when you could go in or when you couldn't. We've gotten smarter. But it comes down to family dynamics. And it's one of the biggest challenges in agriculture. Most people don't have a plan, and a lot of people don't even talk very well, you know, amongst themselves. And, you know, we've brought in some professional help to get us. I don't pretend to think I have this all where I want it to be yet, you know, and we've spent a fair amount of time, but we've got to get there, and I'm sure all of you can relate. I mean, I can list 6 places that didn't get it done, and they're no longer, either they're sold off and they won't talk to each other, or it's messed up. And I don't want to be one of those, and I'm sure none of the rest of you do. So we got to get better at it.
I sure agree with that. And I think it is probably one of the most important things. And I always try and put myself in a position thinking of other businesses outside of the agricultural industry. And I feel like probably their succession or transition stages are a little bit different. Agriculture, we seem to put ourselves in a different situation all the time, for better or for worse. I don't know, but definitely conversations that need to happen more often and not be so scary to have, especially on the successions type of thing. And it's definitely a hurdle that everyone has to go through, and just hope that everyone can find a way to get through it eventually. But I guess, Kim, couple of hurdles or struggles that you guys have gone through going down the direct to consumer sales and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with the whole family dynamics and communication. We also we've gotten some support with communication, how to have good family meetings, good business meetings without anyone getting upset or mad. And kind of gave us tools on how to talk to one another with different personalities. So that was really helpful, and I think it's a lot of family farms deal with that as well. And also to not lose what your main enterprise is while expanding and adding a bunch of different enterprises different enterprises. So yeah, so like not losing focus of what brings you the most money and what the main enterprise is at your farm.
Oh, that's really good. Duane, I guess for you guys, what have been some struggles and hurdles that you've gone through on the grain and the livestock sectors?
Well, it's a bit of a common theme, I guess, that family dynamics and succession is probably one of the biggest challenges in agriculture, and our operation was no different. You know, my dad and I had, it's an interesting thing how you when you're a little guy, you just can't be with your dad enough. You just want to be with him. And then you get to be 18 and your dad's not very smart. And then you've got lots of great ideas. You come back to the business that he's built, and you want to make a bunch of changes, and he's threatened by that. And you're not very happy by that, because you've gone away and you've learned a lot, and he should be open to these ideas, right? And then you get into where you're in his shoes. And my dad was just a little bit younger than I am right now when I came home, and so I've got a whole lot more sympathy for him now than I did back then. I know that. And then having the boys come back, and the challenge that Dad and I went through. Dad died just a little over a year ago, and thank goodness we were friends when he passed, and he was quite proud of what has happened on the business that he started when he was 18 years old. And he and mom, started and got started for me, basically. And so, I was determined that it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way, because even though you know, the boys and I will have our challenges, and thank goodness they're pretty good at calling me out, because I can walk around mad just as good as anybody else. And they're pretty good at calling me out and saying, okay, Dad, what's the problem here? And so thank goodness they are. And we've also brought in other help, because you get that fly on the wall perspective, and somebody that asks the hard questions and challenges everybody at the same level. It's a really important thing. I would strongly recommend that people that are going through succession to bring somebody in to help out, but it has to be somebody that resonates with everybody and can feel with everybody. But you know, succession, I actually like the word succession, because you know, if we do it right, it's our greatest success. Everything that we do is wound up in succession, and if we can, and you know, I guess that's what I'm really happy about, is that Dad passed, seeing that the operation that he started was healthy and bringing in the next generation and seeing great grandchildren. So you know, if that's our goal, then we've got to utilize every resource we can to make it good. And I always say, you know, we want to be able to have Christmas together. We want to go fishing together, and it's not just to throw the other guy out of the boat.
Exactly.
Oh, those are all three of you really great points on some hurdles and struggles that you've all been through, and I think it definitely ties back into communication. I see how impactful that is, whether we're working with our team here at Covers & Co. or back on all of our family farms, how crucial communication is, and seeking for help when you need it. Don't feel like you need to conquer something on your own and work through the troubles if you're struggling. Be out there and reach out for help, and there's people that are trained in that profession to help others get through the hard times, and make sure that we can see those successes on these multi-generational farms and whatnot. So one other question I guess I wanted to tie in today into the soil health world is there something on your guys' farms and that you guys would look at on a soil health side of things, where it might be a practice or an enterprise that you've added to your farm, really to help increase your soil health? Most of you work in some very good systems, and I would say soil health is one of the main drivers for all the decisions that are made on your farms. But is there at a point through your journey that you've taken a time to see, okay, is this actually progressing our soil health? Is there kind of how many years do you look at that where you're trialing, whether it be an enterprise or a practice that you're trying to implement on your farm, before you might pivot to try and do something else to see if you can get there faster? I know for us, we've some really degraded pastures. We tried implementing some rotational grazing systems on them, but obviously we've got into a mindset of instantaneous success. So do we look at implementing winter feeding systems on them, try to switch up our grazing processes as much as possible to really get that soil back in a position where it'll be thriving for generations to come? So maybe if we want to start with Kim, I guess just something on a soil health side of things, some of the practices or enterprises that you take part in, how do they implement your soil health? And is there ever a time where you will stop what you're maybe doing, that practice or the enterprise, to really take a look at, has this progressed their soil health, or do we need to pivot and try something different?
Yeah, I think soil health is definitely one of our biggest concerns here at our farm. Definitely, we're always evaluating, we're always looking at the land, we're always seeing what's going on the land. If we see a piece of, like, a certain pasture that's not performing as well as it should, some things that we've done in the past is we would bale graze during the summertime on that land. So we would put bales out, spread them out. We would let the cows eat all the grass down to not much, and then we would let it rest, so that we would only maybe come back the following year, just to see if that does anything. We did that a couple years ago, and it really worked well. So we're kind of always evaluating that. And also, I'm really excited to see how the sheep and the cattle pastures perform in the next couple years, because last year was the first year that we did that. So I'm excited to see how that progresses in the next few years, and because it's something that we will definitely be continuing.
Duane?
Well, I guess the one thing that I'm really excited about is it doesn't take near as long as I thought it would, or we were told it would take to get more or substantial increases in soil health. That first quarter of land that Dad bought in 1950, we've soil tested it a number of times, and we're at about 2.5 times the average organic matter of the area. And that's pretty fun. It's been through our rotation now twice, and it's going into the forages for the third time. So, that kind of dates me a little bit. But it works. Like when I came back, Dad didn't, we relied on government pasture, and we still summer followed at the time. And so we didn't manage grass. And so it's been a really exciting journey to learn how to manage grass and density grazing and the holistic system. And we'll put a density of 1,100 pairs on about 27 acres sometimes. And the health of that land and to see the increase in soil organic matter and the health of land, that's really exciting. And so I think that's been something that has been really rewarding to learn to density graze and a short harvest window and a long rest period. And I never dreamt you could grow so much grass in a just by managing your system.
Jerry, any points on the soil health side of things for you guys that you've seen as distinctly for maybe changing an enterprise to really impact your soil health journey?
Sure. Two things, I think. One kind of dovetails what Duane just said. This is native rangeland, so a little bit different than planted perennials, but season-long grazing for years and years and years before I was here. And I'm not trying to discredit the generations before. They did what they thought was right at the time. But you had a lot of bare ground, very, very narrow diversity. And so we went in there with, just like Duane's talking about, high animal impact, short duration, long rest and recovery. And all of a sudden you saw a big blue stem and sandy blue stem climbing up these sandy slopes. And we'd get a tour here and somebody would say, "So how did you plant that?" And I'd go, "Big John Deere air seeder," which is not true. That seed was still there, which I was quite honestly surprised about. And all of a sudden you start to get all these forbs and grasses coming. The ground is covered, soil health is improving. Again, we're infiltrating the water, we're not evaporating it as much. All those things start to come together, and you look out there and you go, wow, all of a sudden you can, grow more pounds of beef and all those sorts of things. The second thing is in the cover crops. We've been growing cover crops for a long time now, but the first 2 or 3 years, I just thought it was a lesson in futility. It seemed like we were growing good crop of weeds and but we weren't diverse. 2 or 3 crops you thought was diverse at the time, and that's when we sat down and said, what are we really trying to do? And our goals were, could we improve soil health? Duane, you mentioned summer fallow. As a kid, I was, we were sent out to try to keep it from blowing to South Dakota because the sandy soil shouldn't have been broke probably in the first place, and you disc it up one more time. And could we improve that? I wasn't sure we could. Number 2 was we need to get rid of these winter feed costs or cut them back because they're what killed us in the northern plains, of course. And then number 3, we wanted to propagate wildlife. Even, we have a hunting operation, but even if you didn't, it was still a good thing. And so then we started working towards those 3 goals: more diversity, changing the planting dates up some, and start paying attention to what we're doing. And we've been really successful with that. I mean, When we can graze those cover crops for a full year, it's taken anywhere from $250 to $350 per head off our bill, you know, and if you're bringing the next generation back and trying to figure out how are they going to live here, man, right there, you got one of them paid for, you know, and so it's been a big deal. And as we all know, Mother Nature will slap us around. It's not always perfect. I thought I had this all figured out, and then we got that really bad winter, and I'm like, I really don't know nothing. So it humbles you. But, you know, I think we've all learned that in the soil health arena, keep plugging away. You're making some real progress. And so it's kind of fun to watch.
Oh, those are some really great points. I guess maybe one final question and just some comments from what I've seen from from all three of you is a question or a statement, I guess, that keeps coming up in me, and it's self-insuring on our farm. How can we find a way to ensure that we are going to have profits year in and year out and not be so reliant on someone down the road or the market dictating how profitable we will be if we can heat our home that year, if we can go on a trip, if we really desire to go on one, or anything like that. And I look at all three of your operations. Obviously, Kim, you guys have set your meat prices where you need to be as profitable as possible, and then bring people to your operation. Duane, I know it. I think it was at Ag Days last year when you spoke, and there was a question about the number of cows that you guys had, and if that maybe you'd be increasing because the cattle prices are getting so good. And I thought it was really great. Not many people will be able to say that they were able to take advantage of the highs of canola prices a few years ago, and as well as the highs of cattle prices now, and nothing in your operation changed. Everything was status quo. Jerry sees some really amazing things with the diversity that you guys have gone through with the hunting outfit and as well as your diverse livestock, but also into the wedding venues and your beer sales. Is that something that you guys have really thought about while you're diversifying your systems? Is how can we self-insure ourselves as much as possible and really have an understanding of we need to be profitable every year and setting ourselves up for that success more or less so that we have control of what our profitability is, and it's not going to be dependent on a meat market or a grain market or how many people come to my farm in a year. So Jerry, maybe if you want to start with that one, just chat a little bit about self-insurance, I guess, and is that a thought on your operation?
We talk about it all the time, and part of as we went through this succession, one thing that we have done is we have a weekly L10 meeting. It's only an hour and a half, which gets us out of bitching at each other. There's not time anymore. And it's like that, and it's run just like a corporate meeting. That's been really good for us. And so those sorts of things come up all the time. Is the brewery really cutting its fair share here? Are we maximizing the hunting venture here? And you talked about doing the challenge, and Kim, I'm impressed with your direct marketing because it is a challenge. You hit the nail on the head. We go through this not weekly but monthly, and one of the issues we have, and I'd be curious, Kim, how you handle that as prices have gotten, because on our operation, the ranch sells the cattle to the meat operation. And so these cattle are now a lot of money. And when we try to raise those meat prices to offset that, you know, people say they want health and they want it from a ranch and they want to feel good. But when Walmart's way cheaper, they run to Walmart, you know, and so we're struggling with that a bit. And it's those kinds of things. I think, you know, as we go through these operations, part of the fun, the excitement, hopefully the profitability is stacking these enterprises and ventures. And quite honestly, the hunting one has been the godchild of it all, because it's you know, you mentioned, Kim, and I'll just throw this out and then turn this over to you guys. The unfair advantage to the hunting operation is a major airport 25 miles away. I never would have known that. I never thought anything about it. but most of the people that come hunting here, well, they're from all over, but there's a lot of East Coast people because there is no wildlife left in because the population areas, and so they come here and they just love that they can see the stars, they can see the northern lights, they love the wide open space, things that we tend to take for granted all the time. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know this was that exciting, So it's opened my eyes. And Kim, you're in a population area, obviously, and you've taken it and made something out of it instead of like most of us would do. Well, we got all these doggone people in the way, and now how are we going to make this work? So part of it is, and Duane, you'll get this. To make holistic management or regenerative ag work, you got to get your mindset right. And most of mainstream agriculture can't do that because their mindset is not right. It's not the way we're taught in a university. It's not the way we're taught in most meetings and things. And if you get your mindset right and start to open up, then you can do what Kim's doing. You can do what Duane's doing, or you, Connor, or me, and start to move that profitability needle and start to have fun again. So.
Oh, those are some really great points, Jerry. And it is interesting on the hunting side of things. I think we need to start up a venture at our place because holy smokes, we don't have a very big land base, but the amount of white-tailed deer we've got on our farm the last few years since we started stockpiling more forages and leaving standing corn or swath grazing out in the field, it is very easy to spot 50 or 100 deer by just taking a few steps around our place these days. So yeah, definitely really interesting. I guess, Kim, we'll go to you next. And a conversation I had with your dad, Brian, this fall when he was out at our place for a tour, just talking about kind of setting your prices and in self-insuring, knowing what you guys are going to be set for profitability that year. Told a cool story about well, it was really an open your eyes story. He said he had a customer come to buy some beef one day, and he said, "Oh, I used to buy beef from your neighbor down the road." And he said, "Well, why don't you buy beef from him anymore?" And he said, "Well, he's out of the business." And then your dad looked at me. He said, "Yeah, because he told the guy because you didn't pay him enough. He's not in the
Exactly,
industry
yeah.
anymore because he didn't make enough money." So I really have a great appreciation for finding a way to make sure that you're making enough money to make a go of it, and that you're going to be there and consistently there for that customer to continue to come back to you for years on end. So I guess just on the self-insuring topic, what are some thoughts on that? And is it a major decision maker while you guys are setting your prices in the direct to farm business?
Oh yes, it's one of the biggest decisions probably that we make of the year is how much we're going to be selling our meat for that year, because I know a lot of people look at our prices, a lot of other farms look at our prices, and we are definitely probably one of the more expensive meats or expensive grass-fed beefs in Quebec probably. But we do know how to do our numbers. We know what we need to make. And yeah, next year I'm assuming cattle prices are still going to be pretty high or higher than we paid last spring. So I am slightly concerned of what are customers willing to pay for their meat. We did increase our individual cuts by, I believe, 30% and 35% this year. And we had very little comments about it. So not many people noticed, which was good, I guess. But it's more the price, the carcass price that people pay for quarters, halves, and full beef. That's more of that's our probably 2/3 of our fall sales are bulk orders. So that's definitely a big decision that we need to make. And we talk a lot about it during the winter, and we take a lot of meetings, and we brainstorm a lot during the winter about that.
Really great. Yeah, I guess, Duane, moving to you, we talk about that canola to high steer prices. There isn't many farms across Western Canada I know that can that won't see a high of a high and a low of a low and just kind of stay as status quo, taking advantage of whether it be a high grain market one year and then a high cattle market the next year. Just kind of being in a position knowing that, hey, we're going to have one of our enterprises that does really well this year. And if the other one doesn't do as well, it might be roles reversed the year after. So I guess a little bit on self-insuring on your operation.
Well, I guess first off, I'd like to congratulate Kim on being a high value market and setting the prices and selling the product, because you know that's a challenge, and for you to be able to do that, well done. That's really great that you
Thank you.
set that up, and your customers are coming for a product that they're real happy with. So that's very neat. When I'm in Quebec, I'm going to be looking you up.
Yes, for sure. Stop by anytime.
So, being self-insured has always been a really high priority for me. In fact, years ago, I made an operational flow chart, and one of the branches was to be self-insured, and I actually had the privilege of sharing that with Alan Savory, and I asked him, what he thought of it, and he gave me a nod of approval, so I was quite happy with that. But you referred to the question in Brandon about, and I think the question was, how did I resist breaking up all the forage land for $20 canola? And it really wasn't a hard decision at all for me, because I always wanted to be a cowboy, and so you don't go breaking up all your grassland if you're going to be a cowboy. Now my grain farming son, on the other hand, with all his grain farming buddies, he might look at that quite a bit different. And yeah, there was probably an opportunity cost there, but honestly, it's the long game. And it's the long game in so many different ways, because the biggest benefactor of our rotation is our grain farming side. Our soil health and our very modest input levels, getting a good return in that enterprise benefits from our rotation to such a large degree. So I guess I'm lucky that I've been doing it long enough that I really was well convinced that the self-insured model is the long game. It's the long game for the boys that are here, and hopefully for their children. And soil health and a healthy resource is the ultimate goal.
Well, I think those are all great points on self-insuring, and I really appreciate all three of you coming on tonight. Can't thank you enough for stepping on and talking about your operation. I think just a couple points to take away from tonight: diversifying these revenue streams, trying to find different enterprises on our farms. Couple things that are going to be key to those successes is having that long-term goal in mind. Who are we doing it for, and why are we trying to make these changes? Communication is obviously a massive part of how all these operations run, and I continue to see that on a day-to-day basis, whether it be with us at Covers & Co. or on our family farms as well. So yeah, I thank you guys very much for coming on tonight and answering some of these most of these questions were right off our registration page. So I thank all the people that have joined us tonight for sending those questions in. And I guess maybe one more thought: if there's any way that people can contact you guys, if you guys would want to share that, or if you have a Facebook page or a farm website, feel free to share that right now before we sign off. So Duane, do you want to start there?
Sure. I guess I like to share our operational stuff on Twitter. Just Google my name, Duane Thompson, and I'm happy to, I like to share and advocate, I guess is the right word. It's if we tell our story, we have a responsibility to tell our story, because if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it, and our opponents are so far ahead of us that we really have a responsibility, because to tell our story, and because we're proud of what we do, we're just not real good at telling our story. So that, Facebook, I'm on Facebook, so I'm not a big poster, but I like to share things, positive end of it. So, and anybody can contact me on email or a phone call. I'm happy to talk with people about grass and cows and grass and dogs. My favorite, and kids and family are my favorite contact topics.
Awesome. Kim, what about yourself?
Yeah, for our farm page, it's Briley Farms, Brylee Farms, on Facebook and Instagram. You can also add me on Facebook, just Kim Maloney, or also our website. It has our email and phone number there if you want to talk about anything. If you have any questions about anything, I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Jerry?
Well, anybody can go to blacklegranch.com. All the entities have their own web presence, but it'll link you in, and I don't have a lot to do with it, but the boys all on all the various Instagram, Facebook things. But if anybody wants to contact me, my email's jdoan1882@gmail.com. So it's jdoan1882@gmail.com. Feel free to send me a note. I always love to talk to people just like Duane on what's happening in the cow world. And if we can help you at all with the experiences we've had, I know we're all willing to share those things. So
Awesome. Well, I thank you, panelists, very much for coming on tonight once again. Really appreciate it, and I thank everyone for attending the webinar tonight. I hope you all got some valuable information from our panelists tonight on diversifying revenue streams. And yeah, I guess we'll catch you in 2 weeks when we have our next webinar about establishing perennials at the end of January. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming on tonight, and have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.